Hello and welcome to our presentation, Get Savvy, LEED version 4 for product manufacturers. This is the American Institute of Architects approved promotional statement. This is a structured web-based self-study course with a final exam. One AIA Health, Safety, and Welfare Continuing Education Hour will be issued after the completion of this course. Today's presenter is Glenn Phillips. Glenn has worked with retailers, school districts, architects, and commercial building owners to help implement sustainable development practices. He has played a central role in the development of several sustainable building rating systems, including LEED for retail. Glenn was also a significant contributor towards the creation of the LEED 2009 reference guides and the LEED AP study guide series. Glenn develops and delivers trainings and other educational material to designers and consultants and is comfortable with both in-person and online formats. In his spare time as a father of two inexplicably energetic girls, Glenn volunteers time with the Green Building Interest Group, a working subcommittee of the Cascadia branch of the USGBC, and continues a biomimetic pondering of today's major issues.
In this one-hour course, the participant will evaluate the contributions of building products to successful outcomes of green building projects. Explore the LEED version 4 rating systems from the manufacturer's perspective to gain critical insight when it comes to product selection and what to expect from LEED-savvy manufacturers. Conclude with a review of the literature and tools that manufacturers can utilize to increase their chances of being selected for use in green buildings. And here are our learning objectives. 1. Describe the evolving role of product manufacturers in supporting LEED projects. 2. List the primary LEED version 4 credits associated with building products. And 3. Avoid common pitfalls and misstatements when communicating the sustainability benefits of building products. And finally, assess current and future opportunities to increase product contributions toward LEED certification. Now let's get started. With most manufacturers already involved with LEED at some level, ranging from publishing simple LEED documentation all the way to providing LEED training to design professionals and every point in between, we're going to quickly touch on just the basics and discuss LEED here in a nutshell. We'll cover in more detail the 4 major credits universal to almost all products, and then launch into a conversation about how the product manufacturer's role itself continues to evolve within the sustainable design, construction, and operation of buildings. And most importantly, how you as a building product manufacturer can take advantage of these recent changes to increase your market share. We have 2 organizations that underpin the LEED certification process. First, we have the Green Business Certification, Inc. You may know them by a previous name, the Green Building Certification Institute. That name has been retired. It is now the Green Business Certification Incorporated, along with the United States Green Building Council, or USGBC. These 2 organizations play different complementary roles to support project teams. First of all, building projects will interface almost exclusively with the Green Business Certification, Inc. They will register and certify their projects using the GBCI tools of primarily LEED Online. GBCI also issues and maintains the professional credentials for LEED professionals. So whether you're a LEED Green Associate, a LEED AP, or one of those elite LEED Fellows out there, the GBCI is the organization that awards those credentials. GBCI, however, does not have a membership opportunity, so they're not a membership-based nonprofit. USGBC, on the other hand, is, and USGBC's role is really underneath the forward-facing GBCI that you'll interact with from time to time on projects, and USGBC develops the LEED rating system. We're going to talk about LEED itself here in just a moment, but keep in mind that USGBC is a member-based organization, so your company may be a member, my company is, so there's opportunities to engage with USGBC both as a member and participate in the process of selecting new rating systems, as well as opportunities to engage with them as a volunteer, say on a LEED committee, or that type of thing. So there's a lot of opportunities for organizations to become members of USGBC. Individuals, so you and me as not as a company, but as a person, can feel free to register with the local chapters. However, USGBC itself does not offer individual memberships. Now, what we're really here to talk about today is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED, Green Building Rating System. LEED is an acronym. We're unlikely to spell that whole long form out as we continue to talk about it, but keep in mind this was the original idea of LEED, and it carries forward through today. There are a lot of versions of LEED. In fact, now there are 5 rating systems, and within each rating system there are multiple adaptations. In fact, in the Building Design and Construction rating system, which includes LEED for new construction, LEED for core and shell, and others, there are 8 different adaptations, one being new construction, one core and shell. There's one for warehouses and distribution centers, hospitality, healthcare, schools, retail. It's a relatively long list. So there's a lot of different versions of LEED. However, in each version of LEED, there is a universal structure. So in every single rating system or rating system adaptation, there are individual credit categories. This includes water efficiency, energy, and atmosphere, to give 2 examples. In each category, there are prerequisites, which are mandatory for certification. They must be achieved, and they award no points. There are also credits. These are optional in almost every case, and they award points toward your certification. The commonality between prerequisites and credits is their structure. So the major difference is really only how many points they award and whether they're mandatory or optional. But within each, there is an intent, which is a clear and concise statement of what that credit or prerequisite is trying to achieve. And then there's also the requirements, which detail the specific technical criteria that must be achieved by the project, that is achieved and documented by the project to earn that credit or prerequisite. There's also the opportunity for exemplary performance, which I'll quickly note here, which is going above and beyond on certain pre-selected credits. So energy efficiency, for example, if you save 50 or so %, you get the most points available. But if you push that even further and you save 54% of energy based on your energy analysis, which is pretty technical, we're not going to cover much of that discussion today, you would get an exemplary performance point by kind of reaching even further than the credits directly reward themselves. In addition to the different rating systems and their adaptations, there are also different versions within LEED. So LEED 2009, which is sometimes called LEED version 3, launched unsurprisingly back in 2009 and was the culmination of a series of mostly small refinements to the rating system, beginning with the pilot program 1.0 back in 2001 through versions 2.0, 2.1, and 2.2, with the categories and most of the points being carried forward from version to version. Now with LEED version 4, the changes go much deeper than in previous versions, including a major overhaul of how building materials can contribute. Now, as we're going to discuss throughout this course, these changes have important repercussions for manufacturers who want to be specified on LEED projects and be able to answer those technical or LEED-related questions when their customers pick up the phone and say, Manufacturer X, what can you tell me about how your product is going to help me achieve a LEED credit? Within LEED, there are several common misconceptions, and we're going to take a look at a few of those LEED myths today and hopefully dispel some of those misconceptions about what LEED is and what LEED isn't. Our first myth is that products themselves can become LEED certified or approved. Now, this is completely false. Only buildings are certified by LEED, and only individual professionals are credentialed by the Green Business Certification, Inc. Products are never recognized directly by USGBC, LEED, or GBCI. Now, if a building product manufacturer tells you that their product has been LEED certified or is approved for use on LEED projects, well, it's unlikely that they are correctly informed about how the rating system works at that point. So at best, they're misinformed, and at worst, they may be trying to mislead their customers. So steer clear of those products that tell you that they're LEED certified. That's just flatly incorrect. Our second myth is that certain products are not allowed on LEED. Now, this again is false. You may notice a trend here with the myths that we're talking about. LEED does not ban products. Now, LEED may set optional performance or environmental-based requirements that would need to be met to earn points. So keep in mind those points are optional. They could be left on the table if the project wanted to go in a different direction and pursue different points. FSC lumber is a good example of that. So you can get additional LEED credit by specifying enough FSC wood as a percentage of your total wood. But they don't ban any products. So even something with as colorful a history as PVC is absolutely not prohibited on LEED, and in fact, LEED specifically avoids prohibiting individual products. Our third myth here is that LEED version 4 is pretty much the same as previous versions. While it's true that there are a lot of similarities between LEED version 4 and version 3, there are major differences. In fact, the change between version 3 and 4 was more significant than all of the changes from the pilot version 1.0 all the way to LEED version 3 itself. And that's my opinion, but I think that many people would agree. The MR category, that is the materials and resources category, which as building product manufacturers is going to be something that you're specifically interested in because most of the recognition for products does come in this category. It is an entirely new ballgame. The category itself was completely turned on its side and completely reconfigured. So new LEED literature that addresses the version 4 credits is going to be vital to making sure your customers can successfully utilize your product. Which leads us right to our fourth myth, that product manufacturers aren't involved in the LEED process. Now this again is quite false. Any product manufacturer that's been involved with LEED for some time would know that they do play a vital role. They provide the necessary documentation. So project teams rely on this documentation from the manufacturer, and critically it has to be from the manufacturer. The distributor's documentation or documentation from other sources is generally not even accepted. They also play a key role in educating design professionals about the virtues of their product. So you may have just the coolest, most efficient, greenest product in the world. If nobody knows about it, it's simply not going to get any traction on these LEED projects, or hopefully then penetrate the broader market and even go beyond the percentage of projects that are pursuing certification. So that's all of our goal, is to see these great products be successful, and education is the key to making sure that those professionals can get the job done with the right products. Our fifth and final myth is that LEED is a fad. LEED has grown in popularity since its launch in 2001 and has certified over 13.8 billion square feet. That's about 500 square miles, or half the size of Rhode Island. So we're talking about a massive area of certified buildings just since 2001. It's clearly not just a passing fad. Another critical thing to keep in mind, and perhaps even more important from the product manufacturer's perspective, is that LEED requirements are referenced in 71% of specifications for projects valued at $50 million or more. Now, that's not to say that 71% of those very large projects will certify to LEED. That is not true. But the LEED requirements, and therefore the LEED project team's expectations of the manufacturers, do reference LEED. So be ready to answer those questions about specific LEED criteria, even for non-LEED projects going forward. Now that we've talked about LEED broadly, let's talk more specifically about the individual credits in LEED version 4 that are, for the most part, universal for all building product manufacturers in LEED. We have different elements that we'll talk about each in detail that correspond with 4 major credits. Those elements that products themselves should be aware of are responsible sourcing criteria, product disclosures such as the HPD, we'll talk more about that here shortly, product certifications, life cycle assessments, and then how emitting your product is. So relative to VOC content, is it a low emitting product? Now let's jump into the specifics of those individual LEED credits right now. These universal product concerns, such as responsible sourcing criteria and product disclosures, as we reviewed on the last slide, are addressed by these 4 LEED credits in LEED version 4. So we have 2 categories listed here, the Materials and Resources, or MR category, as well as the Indoor Environmental Quality, or EQ category. Within each category, there are individual credits. Now, you'll recall we talked about how LEED, the structure of LEED works. Now it's evident to you here. So these are individual credits, not prerequisites, but credits within these 2 categories that are going to apply to the vast majority of products on LEED version 4 projects. So before we move on, however, I want to mention that most products are also going to have other types of impacts. Now, Windows is an easy to use example here, which while it touches on all 4 of these as well, it also is going to have impacts on other credits within LEED. So Windows will have an impact on the energy performance of the building. They're also going to have an impact on the daylight within the building, and most directly perhaps, they're going to have a major impact on the accessibility of quality views to occupants. So while these are the universal credits, I don't want to create any misconceptions that these are the only credits that will apply to a given product. It's just that these are the credits that are going to apply to almost every product, with each individual product or product category having one, half a dozen or so other credits that directly apply as well. Now, another example of a product that addresses additional areas within LEED could be toilets. Now, toilets, like any other building product, may have a published environmental and/or human health disclosure. And in fact, there are even several toilets that do, although it's also a major contributor to indoor water use. So while not every single product is going to apply to all of these, what you could call secondary credits, such as water use or daylight and views, most every product touches on some or all of these 4 major credits listed here and are going to have other areas in LEED that apply depending on the product type and function. Now let's get into the specifics of these individual credits. At this point, we're going to dive into the Building Product Disclosure and Optimization series of credits. So those are the first 3 of the 4 credits that we talked about on the last slide. And each of them are structured as 2-part credits. The first part of each is focused on the disclosure. So for this first credit, that includes an Environmental Product Declaration, or EPD, or at least a third-party life cycle assessment, or LCA. The second part of the credit, which we'll talk about as well, is focused on the environmental or human health performance of the product. The intent of this first credit, recall the intent is that relatively concise statement of what this is trying to achieve for projects. The LEED credit intent here is to encourage the use of products and materials for which life cycle information is available and that have environmentally, economically, and socially preferable life cycle impacts. It is also to reward project teams for selecting products from manufacturers who have verified improved environmental life cycle impacts. The requirements that you see here are shown really to reinforce that there's some technical heft to these credits. And while we're focused today on only the manufacturer's responsibilities, it's important to understand that project teams are dealing with these issues for dozens, if not far more, individual products on a given LEED project. It's therefore very important to make your products as easy to use as possible by clearly identifying where your product contributes to remove this as a possible barrier to getting specified. Now, option 1 here, as indicated, requires that projects must use at least 20 products with an EPD or similar documents, such as a third-party certified LCA. Now, this is the disclosure part, and for optimization, the products must be better than the industry average in at least 3 environmental performance categories, such as global warming and acidification. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that while EPDs are of interest to LEED teams, if they can get the 20 or more required by this credit, the overall process to achieve an EPD has several prerequisite steps, including that full product lifecycle analysis and industry-wide consensus on a product category rule. The second credit we're going to talk about is Building Product Disclosure and Optimization, Sourcing of Raw Materials. The LEED credit intent for this individual credit is to encourage the use of products and materials for which life cycle information is available and that have environmentally, economically, and socially preferable life cycle impacts. Alright, so on the technical side of this credit, like the previous credit, there are two options. They are non-exclusive and each is worth 1 point toward your LEED certification. Option 1 again requires 20 products, this time from product manufacturers that publish a corporate sustainability report and disclose several elements of their supply chain practices, including extraction locations for raw materials. Option 2 of this credit is where all the familiar product attributes are now warehoused, and it offers just a single point for the combined contributions of extended producer responsibility, bio-based material, wood products, material reuse, and recycled content. So all of these criteria now are represented by the 1 point available to option 2 of this credit. In the next few slides, we're going to talk about several product attributes, such as recycled content, that in LEED versions past had provided the majority of points in the materials category. And now to really reinforce that the materials category is radically different from previous iterations, we do see that the combined impact of all of these attributes, as I mentioned just a moment ago, is now worth just a single point. So what may have been significant contributions based on recycled content or bio-based materials is now going to just be a contributing factor to just that 1 point. So keep that in mind, and I hope that that reinforces for everyone listening that the materials category is so different and now requires different tools from those manufacturers to earn the same points that project teams had gotten used to picking up here in the materials category. Now, first we're going to talk about extended producer responsibility. Now, this is a policy-based approach to a product manufacturer's environmental impacts that address the product at its end of life. The programs set up by these manufacturers who engage in extended producer responsibility that aim to accomplish two things. It shifts responsibility from the building owner back upstream to the producer and away from municipalities. Now, what do we mean by that? We mean that the manufacturer has some built-in incentive to create their products in such a way that they are easily managed at their end of life. Now, that could mean that they are recycled. That may mean simply that they're taking hazardous materials out so that they can be processed as standard municipal waste. It also creates an incentive for manufacturers to take into account those impacts. So if they have those materials on their hand once they've reached their end of life, and there is, for example, a hazardous material used in their creation, the manufacturer is going to time and again look at opportunities to remove those materials to better their own bottom line, because now this burden of managing these products once they've been decommissioned is squarely on their shoulders. A good example here is carpet. There are carpet manufacturers out there who are more than willing to take back their carpet at its end of life. They will reprocess it and turn it into new material. So they're literally taking your old carpet and turning it into new. Our second category is related to bio-based materials. Now, bio-based materials at a literal interpretation would be a very broad category. This means something more specific. So we're looking at meeting the Sustainable Agriculture Network's Sustainable Agriculture Standard. Now, that sounds like a lot of words that may not mean much to most, but what this means is that the farms where the crops are grown have to meet the Rainforest Alliance guidelines and policies. Now, the farm does not need to be Rainforest Alliance certified, but the manufacturer can provide a self-attestation to say that yes, we manage our farm in accordance with these guidelines and policies set out by the Rainforest Alliance. Now, back in my days as a LEED project consultant, there was a predecessor to this credit referred to as rapidly renewable materials. This essentially entailed that you use materials such as bamboo and cork that would have less than a 10-year replenishment cycle. Now, this was very early on one of the credits that we almost always dismissed as not feasible, because the products that can be claimed, such as wool insulation, cork flooring, wheat board, and I've already mentioned bamboo, always ended up being a very small percentage of the material cost, which that's how LEED calculates things related to material contribution, is based on cost. So even as a LEED certification reviewer, which I've also done in the past, where I was lucky enough to look at the LEED submissions from literally hundreds of projects. It was very, very rare to see a project even attempt this credit, and even in that rare instance where they would attempt it, it was more common than not that it was attempted with incorrect materials such as wood, which obviously is a bio-based material based on a literal interpretation, but doesn't contribute here because it doesn't meet the standard of either rapidly renewable or perhaps it's farmed in a way that does not meet the Rainforest Alliance guidelines and policies. For a wood product to contribute as a sustainably sourced product, it must be certified using the FSC program, that is the Forest Stewardship Council's FSC program. Chain of custody documentation is essential for compliance with this option of the credit. Chain of custody tracks FSC certified wood as it moves through harvesting, production, manufacturing, and the distributing chains. In order for a LEED project to make a claim about FSC wood, the product must be handled by operators carrying chain of custody certifications at every step, up through the final vendor, but not necessarily the contractor. Anyone who is required to have chain of custody certifications must provide their certification number on their invoices. Now, invoices themselves become an important part of the documentation. The invoices must identify each wood product on a line item basis, whether or not it's FSC certified, identify the FSC status of each line item, show the dollar value for each line item, and then show the vendor's chain of custody certificate number on any invoice with FSC products. The next category here is material reuse. So this specifically refers to products that are salvaged, refurbished, or reused. And most of us are familiar with recycled content. Now, there's two types of recycled content. There's post-consumer and pre-consumer. Pre-consumer is often referred to as post-industrial. LEED will use the term pre-consumer. So the post-consumer material may be metal made from old aluminum cans that are made from plastic bottles, newspapers, or even previously installed building products. The pre-consumer material, which is only valued at 50% compared to the post-consumer, is waste material that was never owned by a consumer. So this may be fly ash or textile clippings. Now, an often overlooked part of the recycled content is that even pre-consumer content can't be claimed for trimmings or other waste streams that are fed back into the same manufacturing process. So it does need to be put back into other separate manufacturing processes to comply. Now, there's currently no additional programs that have been approved by USGBC for use in their rating system, except on a limited pilot basis. But it is expected that this will evolve over time, and because the LEED credit was written with this carve-out for future editions, new programs do not necessarily need to be balloted by USGBC members. So staying on top of this information before other building product manufacturers that you may compete with is a great way to maintain or even to develop a competitive advantage when selling to the sustainable design and construction market. The third and final materials and resources credit that we're going to talk about is building product disclosure and optimization material ingredients. Now again, the intent has that same first half, which is to encourage the use of products and materials for which life cycle information is available and that have environmentally, economically, and socially preferable life cycle impacts. It's also to reward project teams for selecting products for which the chemical ingredients in the product are inventoried using an accepted methodology and for selecting products verified to minimize the use and generation of harmful substances. To reward raw material manufacturers who produce products that have been verified to have improved life cycle impacts. So you can see right here in the intent, this is intended to reward manufacturers. So keeping in mind that LEED is a broad-based tool, it's an instrument for market transformation, and in rewarding manufacturers, they've got that carrot there to get manufacturers to participate in this process. And depending on your specific industry, that may be a very significant carrot. Before we jump into some of the more detailed aspects of the disclosures used by this credit, let's take a moment to consider a brief introduction to the Health Product Declaration, or HPD.
HPD stands for Health Product Declaration. The HPD is an open standard format for reporting product content and health information for building products and materials. The HPD's ongoing development and maintenance is managed by the nonprofit Health Product Declaration Collaborative. The HPD Collaborative relies on input from both customers and manufacturers. The HPD ensures that customers have access to much-needed information regarding a product's content and associated health data. An HPD allows designers, specifiers, builders, and owners to make informed decisions when selecting building products. The product declaration references several priority hazard lists to inform users about the health hazards associated with exposure to a product's contents. However, the HPD is not an assessment of the risks associated with actual use of the product. The declaration provides a standard format that can be used by other product certifications and green building rating systems like LEED. Products with HPDs can help contribute points under LEED v4. HPDs are now being requested by the top AEC firms in the country, including Perkins & Will, HKS, Smith Group JJR, and Beck. Manufacturers that provide HPDs will be given preference over manufacturers that don't comply with these requests.
Now, digging into the details of this credit, into the requirements, you can see that there are many ways to achieve option 1, that is the disclosure component of this credit. One of the most popular methods to achieve this option is using a Health Product Declaration, or HPD. The top design firms in the United States have already begun requesting HPDs from manufacturers. Firms such as Perkins & Will, Smith Group JJR, HKS, and ZGF are all encouraging product manufacturers to provide HPDs in order to be considered for product specification. Manufacturers who do provide these HPDs will be given preference over manufacturers that don't comply with these requests. Now, one thing to note about the Health Product Declaration is that the disclosure needs to be to 1,000 parts per million to qualify for LEED, although some manufacturers have completed their own HPDs to a lower standard that would be rejected by LEED reviewers if it doesn't meet this or several other specific criteria about how you put your HPD together. So just because it's a qualifying HPD does not mean that it's a LEED eligible HPD. So there is that important difference. The parts per million is one element, and that all known hazards have been disclosed is another key element there to qualify for LEED, even beyond what's considered a minimally compliant health product declaration. Now, option 2, just like the previous building product disclosure and optimization credits, focuses on the optimization side. So we're looking for an eco label at this point. So for example, Cradle to Cradle Gold certification on the product. So these are not LEED certifications. These are other third-party certifications such as Cradle to Cradle or a green screen benchmark that, while they represent a certified product, it is certainly not LEED certified. So I want to make sure that that distinction is clear. A product can absolutely be Cradle to Cradle certified, but it would never be LEED certified. Now, the fourth and final universal credit is low emitting materials, and now we're talking about the indoor environmental quality, or EQ, category of credits. Now, in this credit there are 7 categories. However, 2 of these categories apply only to LEED for healthcare or LEED for schools projects, and would not apply to your LEED for new construction, your LEED for retail, or LEED for core and shell type projects. Now, the categories themselves are interior paints and coatings, only those applied on site. So if you have a factory applied, say powder coating, that would not factor in here to the low emitting materials. Interior adhesives and sealants, again, applied on site. So if you had a composite material that was assembled with an adhesive at a factory that was not within the building, you would be able to exempt those adhesives and sealants here too. So again, just applied on site. Flooring, ceiling walls, thermal and acoustic insulation. Now this is just for LEED for healthcare and schools. Composite wood, furniture, if it's included in the scope of the project, that is, and then exterior applied products. So again, just LEED for healthcare and schools. Now, these categories cover a lot of different building products. So composite wood is in a lot of building products. Flooring, that's a pretty large category. Paints, coatings, again, huge numbers of products are affected by this. So while not every single product is going to have an applicable category here in low-emitting materials, it should be noted that many products do, and those that do will want to be sure that they're compliant. All right, so to look at these categories in just a little bit more detail, I promise we're not going to get too caught in the weeds here. We've got our paints and coatings, adhesives and sealants, floorings, and then where applicable, the ceilings, walls, thermal, and acoustic insulation. These need to meet the California Department of Public Health Standard Method version 1.1. Now, that basically means a small chamber test where they will seal your product in a sealed chamber and take air samples periodically throughout the testing cycle. The other requirement here is that there's no formaldehyde in batt insulation. Now, in addition to those small chamber tests that are required, interior paints, coatings, adhesives, and sealants also need to meet wet applied VOC content requirements. So the VOC chamber testing will tell us about VOC emissions. The requirements here are not focused on emissions, but actually the content, that is in grams per liter, of the wet product. So paint and coating will commonly report their grams per liter of VOC. And we detail our remaining three categories here. So we've got composite wood, furniture, and then some rules around exterior applied products. For composite wood, only low emitting, or that is ultra low emitting formaldehyde or no formaldehyde. So you can't use your just toxic binding resins. You've got to go with that ULEF or a non-formaldehyde based resin there for your composite wood. Furniture, if it's included in the scope of the project, and oftentimes it's not, needs to meet one of these two BIFMA standards. And then exterior applied products, and just for healthcare and schools, need to meet additional VOC criteria for outdoor applied adhesives, sealants, coatings, roofing, and waterproofing materials. And there's two prohibited strategies here. So hot mopped asphalt roofing and coal tar sealants for parking lots are prohibited. Now that we've talked about the existing universal credits in LEED version 4, we consider the fact that there are a lot of LEED version 3 projects still active out there. In fact, projects can continue to register under LEED version 3, brand new projects. They may be in early schematic design or even in earlier phases of the project, can still register up until October 31st, that's Halloween, this year, 2016. So up until that date, projects, even brand new projects, may still be registering under previous iterations. So what does that mean? That means that there needs to be a bridge between the requirements of today and the LEED version 4 of tomorrow. And one of the ways this bridge is put into place are through pilot credits. Now, pilot credits allow projects to use specific strategies, in this case, many of those same options from the Environmental Product Declaration and the Health Product Declaration credits that we've talked about. In fact, option 1 and 2 each can count for a full bonus point in the innovation category. So as innovation strategies, these can be implemented today on LEED version 3 projects. However, they have lots of options when they consider these bonus points, and these are but a few of the many options. So I don't want to suggest that LEED version 3 projects must do this, but they can absolutely receive credit today, even on a LEED version 3 project, for using products that have HPDs, EPDs, or improved life cycle impacts. Now, there's some other way that projects can use LEED version 4 on version 3 projects today, and that is by swapping the entire materials and resources category. Now, that's a big change. You can whole hog switch the categories themselves. So you essentially take the materials and resources category out of version 4 and replace the version 3 category with it. And now this creates a lot of new requirements. So now we're focused on disclosures, on EPDs, on HPDs, on responsible sourcing criteria, but it does offer project teams and, most importantly, manufacturers a way to get credit for their actions today, even if their projects aren't pursuing LEED version 4 yet. I'll add that come November 2016, every new project registering will be version 4. So while the pipeline may be majority LEED version 3 today, that will flip itself around here in the very near future. Now, in addition to the major changes in the materials and resources category, there are some other key evolutions within LEED version 4 that building product manufacturers ought to know about. First of all, the transparency focus. So we've been talking about this in the materials category, but the MR credits reward just disclosing the human health and environmental performance data, regardless of the level of performance. So you could have the most toxic, the least efficient product out there. I hope you don't. But even if you did, it would be possible to create that EPD and the HPD and still contribute points to LEED projects. The focus on option 1 and all of those credits is exclusively disclosure. So it does not factor in the actual performance. The second key evolution here is the tightening of the regional consideration. So what do we mean by that? In past versions of LEED, there were 2 points on the table, up to 2 points, if you sourced a significant percentage of your building materials from within 500 miles. Now this radius is a lot tighter. It is now just 100 miles in terms of factoring in for regional consideration. Additionally, it does not have its own dedicated credits. So while in the past there were 2 points that you had to buy regional products or you were going to leave on the table, now they fall under those secondary categories and really provide a cost multiplier. So your $100 worth of wood that's sourced from across the street is valued at $200 in your calculation. So it's now a multiplier and it's a much tighter radius. So who you can sell to as a regional product for LEED version 4 did shrink considerably. So manufacturers are going to need to look for other ways to contribute to those LEED projects. Now, the introduction of rating system adaptations. This isn't entirely new, but there's so many more versions of LEED now. So the 5, what we can call flavors, specifically called adaptations of LEED 2009 for building design and construction. So that was LEED for new construction and major renovation, LEED for schools, and LEED for core and shell, and then added by supplement under LEED version 3 were LEED for retail and LEED for healthcare. That's expanded now to 8 different versions that include LEED for warehouses and distribution centers, LEED for hospitality, and even LEED for data centers, because of course they have very different energy use profiles. And then finally, and I haven't heard anyone else talking about this, is the loss of easy innovation credits. Now, back in previous versions of LEED, there was not a credit for a whole building life cycle assessment. Now, we didn't talk much about that today, but big picture, the project team can get some points for doing a whole building life cycle assessment. It's like doing a life cycle assessment on a product, but it's on a building. And there's lots of great tools about whole building LCA out there, so including some educational courses. So I encourage you to look for those if you'd like to learn more. But with the introduction of that credit, it has taken a lot of previously viable strategies for innovation off of the table. Now, there's an important reason for that, is that innovation credits have to be strategies that are not addressed in other parts of LEED. Now, in LEED 2009 and previous, there was no credit for whole building LCA. So you could say, wow, our building steel is a major component of our building. We've done a life cycle assessment on this steel. It's way better than industry standard. We can quantify our environmental benefit. This is significant. Let's submit that as an innovation credit and hope that they go for it. In past versions, that might have actually worked. But because that whole building life cycle assessment credit is now in place, the LEED reviewers are going to come back to the team that attempts that credit, and they're going to tell you that this credit, this strategy is already recognized in another LEED credit and is therefore ineligible for an innovation strategy. So keep that in mind if you're pursuing innovation credits, and there's ways to work on developing your own innovation credit to put out there and propose to USGBC. If it's later accepted, then project teams into the future will be able to use that strategy. So that's another key element to keep in mind. So these are 4 other key evolutions in addition to the major shakeup of the credits themselves. So at this point, we've laid out some practical and straightforward information about how LEED has changed. But as a manufacturer, what does that really mean for you? Now, first off, while it may seem like a mysterious market which is going to forever ask for increasingly hard to obtain information, it doesn't have to be scary. Now, a major point from earlier is that there's no such thing as a prohibited product. So while a given product may or may not contribute to any specific credit, there are no products that are forbidden on LEED projects. Now, in typical LEED fashion, there is an exception to this rule, which addresses certain mercury-containing lamps that are used in hospitals, but that's literally the only hard and fast prohibition, and really only addresses a few types of lamps, certainly not any lamp that contains mercury. Now, many manufacturers incorrectly see themselves as unconnected with LEED, beyond, of course, providing the products that make up our built environment, and not to diminish that, of course. However, they must first meet a few criteria before the project teams are likely to give them the preference that they're really looking for on LEED projects. First and foremost is clear product literature. In fact, LEED requires that project teams provide documentation that's published by the manufacturer, not a third-party testing lab or even the distributor. If no manufacturer's literature is published, no credit can be counted. Literature also includes published transparency documents, such as the Health Product Declaration and any publicly available life cycle assessment data. Now, back in my days as a LEED consultant, we were often asked by design teams for recommended strategies or products, with our focus being very specific to how we can maximize our LEED point gain. Our assessments were very thorough, and in one we looked at the life cycle impacts of using a different backsplash configuration for a commercial cooking station. Now, while a life cycle assessment can help a project team get a better handle on the overall unknowns of a product's environmental impact, in this case there was only one manufacturer who had all this data available to support our assessment. Now, this allowed us to fairly easily recommend this product to the national quick service restaurant chain. Now, it's a big restaurant chain with about 4 billion annual sales. So it was a relatively big deal for that product manufacturer to be considered. There did remain a couple potentially suitable manufacturers, but just that one manufacturer that had the published life cycle assessment data was referenced in our recommendation. Now, that's a somewhat extreme example, and it remains pretty uncommon for manufacturers to have common life cycle data for their products, but it helps to highlight the fact that manufacturers who can respond to these types of requests can open up new business opportunities. If documentation is the vehicle, designer outreach and education is the fuel that helps connect the dots for specifiers. Top manufacturers offer continuing education, that is, helping design professionals maintain their professional license and credentials, which is the best way to reach the design community, as they need the education, so it ends up being a win-win for both designers who get their continuing education, often at no direct cost to them, and the building product manufacturer who gets to help shape the education so that it highlights the design challenges solved by their given product or technology. There's a few additional things to keep in mind about the decision maker's point of view, that is the architect, spec writer, and more broadly the project team. Fees are shrinking, deadlines are shorter, lawsuits are rampant, and technology is exploding. Product manufacturers, to take advantage of these industry changes, should really focus on getting their products listed in the design professional's office master specification. Now, you need to get the right LEED information in the right format to the right person at the right time. That's not easy, especially for limited sales teams and the like. Now, of course, the architect or specifier is looking at a lot of different information, not simply how many points it's going to earn under LEED. So what are they considering? Is the product brand new or is it time proven? Is it suitable for the intended use? Does it require unique installation procedures? Now, very importantly, is it available at the project location at the required time? Are there equivalent products? Is it compatible with other products? Is there a performance history, especially given a sustainable product? Is there a performance history as submitted for LEED? What's the life cycle cost? Is there a warranty? Is it a good warranty? What are the exclusions? And that's probably the most important thing to look at. And then what building codes are appropriate and what reference standards are required. So there's all these factors that go into each product decision. So again, to reinforce the fact that Designers who have those master specifications that can simply pull a product off the shelf and just say yes without giving it a focused research effort are going to not only make their lives easier, but to make the product manufacturer's life better by getting involved on more projects. Now let's shift gears and talk about some opportunities for product manufacturers to increase their engagement with these types of LEED projects. Now, first of all is LEED-focused literature. This is a credit-by-credit summary of how the product contributes to LEED. The summary can be incorporated into their product literature, the website, or even their continuing education courses. Their entire team should be educated on this summary with a special focus on the sales folks. Now, one additional piece of literature that we didn't talk about much today, and it isn't necessarily related to LEED, but it remains critical in marketing your product, is a 3-part guide specification, so that spec writers can include your product in their project, or even better, of course, in that master specification, meaning, again, that you become that default choice on future projects. Another opportunity are those transparency documents, such as the Health Product Declaration, Environmental Product Declaration, and Life Cycle Assessment. Now, while both EPDs and HPDs contribute similarly to their respective credits, that is, having 20 of either is worth 1 point, there is a major difference in how much it costs and how long it takes to create that EPD, including the underlying life cycle assessment and product category rule, as we've talked about, which in some cases can be tens of thousands of dollars, even more than $50,000, depending on participation of other manufacturers within that same product category. Now, that contrasted with an HPD, for which most products can complete that for as little as $5,000 or so if you utilize a qualified third party. Now, these behind-the-scenes reports, that is, transparency documents, allow manufacturers to share their story about what makes their product green, how it reduces environmental impacts, and the like. Architects are asking for this information like never before, and now is the time to be in front of those influential design firms with these high-demand documents. The next opportunity to touch on here is continuing education. Now, I personally always stress that education equals specification. Out of sight is frankly out of mind. If an architect, interior designer, or project team is not aware of the benefits of a product, then they're never going to specify it. Now, a question I'm often asked when talking with manufacturers who haven't done continuing education in the past is why they should develop a continuing education course. It's an honest question and certainly a fair one. The short of it is that you establish yourself as an industry leader when you help educate those design professionals about your product. Because all design professionals must maintain ongoing continuing education, including for their LEED credential, AI membership, their professional engineer's license, and the like, continuing education is an effective way to diversify your marketing strategy. Design professionals can spend quality time participating in your education course that cultivates a strong understanding of your product's technology and function. Providing this continuing education gives you an opportunity to develop a competitive advantage by demonstrating your product expertise, industry leadership, and technical advantages. For those of you already providing continuing education, that's terrific. However, if your primary delivery format for your online education are Word documents or downloadable PDFs, frankly, you're in trouble, and you need to update this program for the 21st century to maintain the mind share of those who participate in continuing education courses. Now, online courses, are often known as online anytime courses or on-demand courses, can provide a really low-cost, high-convenience alternative to those on-site presentations. For a traditional face-to-face presentation, the presenter travels to a location, stays a night or two in a hotel, meets in a facility with equipment, they're going to eat in restaurants, and generally invest a lot of time and resources to reach a relatively small number of important decision makers. Online courses provide a great marketing tool because they work for your company 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Online courses can utilize various media, including video, animation, audio narration, and interactive features. Documentary movies can also work extremely well for this delivery format and have been proven to be the industry leader for high participation, which we're going to talk about here shortly. Online courses are also great to track an architect's expertise about your product, since they're going to have to take a quiz after participating that can demonstrate that they've actually picked up some of the information. Now, we have a couple significant facts to consider, especially if your company isn't yet using video for online education, installer training, and marketing. Multinational technology giant Cisco Systems conducted some comprehensive studies in internet use. They've concluded that consumer internet video traffic is going to be 80% of all consumer internet traffic by 2019, and that's up from 64% in just 2014. The proliferation of video-enabled devices such as smartphones and iPads introduces a new type of lightweight solution for both educators and learners. Now, Cisco's research highlighted 3 key benefits for video education which can be applied to your own outreach efforts. So, first, we have interactivity with content. Second is higher user engagement. And third, it improves the knowledge transfer and memorization of the topic. So video education sounds great, doesn't it? But what are some of the barriers? Well, research indicates that students and young professionals such as architects and engineers today are fundamentally different from previous generations in the way that they access, absorb, interpret, process, and use information, and above all, in the way that they view, interact, and communicate in the modern world. Today's design professionals are increasingly visual spatial learners, able to multitask and interact with multimedia. Product manufacturers don't need to become filmmakers themselves to utilize this video-based strategy. They only need to realize the incredible benefits of this medium. In fact, the highest performing AIA and GBCI registered courses in the industry are video-based, significantly outperforming traditional courses in terms of participant engagement and raw participation numbers at large. Now, an important format when it comes to delivering education is the online live webinar format. Webinars are very popular these days, and companies are using them more and more. You may present a face-to-face continuing education course through the webinar hosting platform to reach your target audience without the costs associated with travel. Now, whether design professionals are living in the city or in the most remote rural areas, they'll have the opportunity to learn about your product technology and fulfill their annual educational requirements without even leaving the comfort of their home or office. There's no geographical boundaries. You're not limited to your city, state, or even country. Because of the global possibilities, you can reach people around the world. The benefits here include educating potentially hundreds of architects, engineers, designers, all in the span of 1 hour. Webinars are an easy, low-cost, leveraged way to add value and maintain your relationship with customers. Now, since the cost to deliver a webinar is relatively low, they can be distributed on a much more frequent basis than you could ever have a sales team in a given city to talk to those major architecture firms. The third type of format for delivery of continuing education, in addition to on-demand or webinar programs, is the face-to-face presentation. Now, with a live instructor-led face-to-face course, your product representatives can present to architecture firms across the country. Face-to-face presentations can be given at trade shows, industry events, or even at your own office's showroom or factory. Face-to-face presentations provide human contact among participants and opportunities to develop transparency and trust among each other in ways that are not always possible compared to other forms of communication. So absolutely sing the benefits of education delivered over the internet. There is still something to be said to that face-to-face connection. It is also important to provide education for your sales and marketing teams. Now, of course, not every employee needs to be a lead AP. But the sales and marketing team should have a thorough knowledge of how the product applies to LEED. Now, it's highly recommended that one or more of your team members become at least a LEED Green Associate. I'll even mention that there's a high-quality, no-cost education course available that can train your entire company about LEED. So, while similar trainings have often run in the hundreds of dollars, there is one cost barrier that we were really happy to see come down. We'll reference that free resource specifically at the end of this presentation. So where does that leave individual manufacturers? Where are you today? So included in the resources section of this course, we have a Building Product Manufacturer LEED Readiness Checklist. Now, please refer to this checklist to self-assess your own individual efforts related to LEED, and it can be helpful in identifying opportunities where you're maybe not participating today, but there could be something there in terms of increasing your relevance to those LEED projects. So with so many potential directions that a building product manufacturer could take in terms of increasing participation in LEED, it can be difficult to pick which direction to go. And there's some conventional wisdom that one ought to pick the low-hanging fruit first. And what is the low-hanging fruit in this context? First of all, the three-part guide specification, the HPD, LEED documentation, and continuing education. Any or all of these can be put into place quickly and affordably. In terms of spending your dollars where you're going to get the most bang for your marketing buck, these would be the recommendations that we put forth. So let's quickly recap what we've learned today. LEED can be a complex yet surmountable landscape. Competitive advantage is going to go to the leader, but all building product manufacturers who want to continue getting specified for LEED will have to act regardless of whether they did or didn't take advantage of the advantage given to those who acted first. And steps can be taken right now, regardless of how prepared you are otherwise for LEED. So there's small steps or big steps, regardless of where you are, that you can help get yourself to the position of engaging more positively with those LEED project teams. Now, 2016 has already been shaping up to be a significant year of change, with LEED version 4 coming online, or becoming the only option rather, at the end of the year, and design professionals looking for collaborative suppliers who can anticipate their needs through clear and current documentation and relevant and compelling continuing education. Education equals specifications. The more architects you educate, the more opportunities you're going to have to get specified on those projects. The more that you invest in developing high-quality education, LEED documentation, health product declarations, or even a three-part guide specification, the better chance that the architect is going to specify your product. Your call to action today is to plan for the future, to have a game plan in place for this year when LEED version 4 goes into full effect. Don't let the competition get ahead of you.
This concludes our presentation. Is your product LEED certified? Has the USGBC endorsed your product to use on a LEED project? Well, guess what, buddy? The USGBC doesn't certify products, services, or companies. Only buildings can be LEED certified. So if someone tries to sell you a LEED certified product, tell them to put it in their pipe and smoke it. Products play a significant role in LEED and can help contribute LEED points. It's up to design teams to select which products are the most appropriate for credit achievement and program requirements. In order for a designer to specify products that comply with LEED requirements, the product manufacturer needs to provide accurate and up-to-date product documentation. The guide specs that your CAD operator wrote 20 years ago aren't gonna cut it. Green CE develops product literature to describe how your building products align with LEED v4. Our team provides a credit-by-credit summary of all applicable credits that your product contributes to under the LEED rating system. We provide you with the technical content that is required by project teams to specify your building products. Under LEED v4, building product manufacturers have new ways to contribute points. The Health Product Declaration, or HPD, provides a standardized way of reporting the material contents of building products and the health effects associated with these materials. The most influential design firms in the U.S. are requesting HPDs from manufacturers in order to be considered for product specification. Manufacturers who have HPDs will be given preference over manufacturers that don't comply with these requests. If you're planning on copying and pasting your MSDS sheets into an HPD, think again. They won't meet LEED requirements and you won't get your product specified. So do yourself a favor. Let Green CE develop your LEED product documentation and HPDs. Then take that vacation to Pamplona, Spain you always wanted to go on. The Bulls are running, and so should you.